Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel, and we are now in London, and our guest is the expert in gaming industry. That's the first episode devoted to gaming, and I hope we're going to have more episodes devoted to gaming because this is an extremely interesting topic to discuss. Today with me is Szymon Vincze, the expert from Casino Guru.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to kickstart the series about gaming or gambling.
Yeah.
So I work for Casino Guru. What Casino Guru is, I would say the revenue generation that Casino Guru does, it's the affiliation. So we are an affiliate company. So we are running an affiliation business on the database of online casinos, which we have. It's more than 6,000 and almost 6,500 casinos.
Whew.
Yeah, so what we do is that we proactively look for them, we gather information about them, we put them on our website, and we calculate a safety index based on this information. That is consisting mainly from looking into their terms and conditions, looking into their history and complaints, looking into their possibility to pay out winnings. So we are trying to figure out their revenue in order to provide the reliable information for our visitors. So what the index is basically saying is how fairly the casino is going to treat you and what are the chances that they are going to be able to pay out your winnings.
I have some plan for the interview, but I just immediately have questions about all of this index and about this list of casinos. Is this list growing very fast or not very fast in terms of the years?
So I would say that per year it would be more than 1,000 casinos that we would add. So it's not like there is 6,500 active casinos. Many of them are inactive, and we would basically show it on the website.
Strike them off, yeah.
But we are keeping those brands there in order to have history. So with every brand, and if there are any complaints or if there are any blacklists, anything that would be connected with them, it would remain on the website.
In terms of jurisdictions, do you understand more or less what is the picture there, like where these casinos are based? That's incredible. These guys basically have all the information about online casinos, about online gambling, and that's great to have the person like that in our first interview about gaming.
So it's not like all the information. It's all the information that we are able to get from the publicly available sources.
Right.
But yeah, it's honestly, we are sitting on a big piece of data which you cannot find anywhere else, and we mainly use it to have like I was saying, it's basically a reputation reflection. Mm-hmm. So what is on our website, those are the things that the casinos cannot get away from. Or to better say, they can even show that they are the ones who care about their customers and they are the ones who are treating them fairly, because that it comes on the resolution of the complaints, which we do as well. So it's like we are an independent dispute resolution, sort of say. We do not have any agreements or any legal bindings with these companies. Mm-hmm. But based on our authority and based on our traffic, casinos are paying attention on how they are portrayed.
Yeah, I'm sure about that.
We are able to create a leverage to do the right decision.
Great. Do you have some of the casinos that are crypto casinos that just accept crypto?
I'm not sure if just accepting crypto, but definitely there are the ones who are accepting cryptos, yes.
Because another industry that is emerging right now is the industry of crypto scoring, basically, such as companies as Chainalysis or Crystal, etc. They basically are creating an index or a rating of let's say entities that are working inside in crypto, and so they can also provide some information about which entity is reliable and which entity is not reliable. Would be interesting if you could have some kind of a collaboration with them, so that you can provide information about which one is legit and not legit. We're going to cover the question, what does it mean legit, because this is something that is very popular word in casino world, so we're going to talk about this. About the internet, so we know that the internet has changed the gaming world. Really, before that, we could have like brick and mortar casinos, the casinos in real premises, and everything that is happening there is gambling or is gaming. And right now, the problem is that we have the internet, we have the games that are somewhere in between. You can have an airplane going, the famous aviator game, etc., etc. And you never know exactly what does it mean. Is it like a game, or is it a gambling thing? If you play, for example, CS:GO for money, is it a game or a gambling? How do you think? To which extent we have this line, this bright line, vague nowadays because of the inception of the internet?
So it is really scrambled, and the lines between these two are blurring. Yeah. I would say mainly from the perspective of the consumers or the users, so they wouldn't be able to really say what is gaming and what is gambling. I think by definition it's quite easy to distinguish it. So gaming should be a game of skill, and gambling should be a game of chance, also including some sort of a stake. I would say that even a financial stake. So if you as a consumer are there to put something in some sort of a value in a stake, it doesn't have to be euros or dollars or whatever, and you are having some sort of a chance for an outcome, which could be good and bad for you, then it is gambling. But it's so mixed up. And especially with the aviator that you mentioned, I was just having a conversation with the friend of mine, and we were looking into how the aviator looks like, because it is a very successful game by no doubt. And it's because they have combined so many things which are appealing and entertaining for customers. You have the airplane, which is flying. You are having an impression, and this might be a little bit risky, that you have an impression that you can somehow decide or you can somehow influence it. I mean, you can, but only to a certain extent, right? Because you never know when the plane is going to go down. And then you have a social aspect of the game, which is on the right side, so you can see others doing and wagering and winning. So there is no wonder it's so popular. And what it does for me, it emphasizes the entertainment in gambling, which gambling definitely is. What is important is that it is associated with the specific risks, and those risks are different than the risks with gaming. And that should be the thing which should remain as a pillar in between those two, that these risks are important, otherwise it can go south.
Although they're so much interconnected. For example, I just talked with Graham Barrow yesterday. we took an interview with him before, and we were talking about betting and gambling, and he was telling that all this betting is an absurd, should not exist, or something like that. Sorry, Graham. But at the same time, we understand that that's the only thing that actually supports professional sports. So without betting, for example, professional sports would not exist. And aviator is just the same. You just bet basically for something that is flying, can go down, can go up. Just like in sports, someone can score the ball or not scoring the ball. One of the things that is extremely important right now in the industry is Sigma Conference. If you go to Sigma Conference, you will see many platforms, you will see many game providers, and then you will realize that it's interesting that the internet has changed the concept of the gaming provider. You don't have a casino, you have a number of different providers. One of them is definitely the casino itself. Then you have the platform provider. The platform provider being basically providing you with the games, providing you with software, providing you with marketing, etc., providing you even with gamers, with the people. What is your comment on how this whole world changed because of the internet, because of the progress?
Because of the reason of what you've just described, that's why the companies who are organizing events in online gambling are so successful, and their events increased in size tremendously. So I started working in the iGaming almost 4 years ago. And what I do is I attend conferences pretty often because for my work, it's based about the collaborative projects. So when I started there, we were still wearing masks, and it has increased tremendously because iGaming industry is so collaborative. You need all of these partners in order to run the business. So you need to have a platform on which you run your online casino, which basically gives life to your brand. Then you need the game developers who put the games together. Then you need payment providers to get the money in. And then there is so many other softwares and collaborators that you can get on board, either if it's required by the regulation or it would somehow make things easier for you or better experience for your players.
Right. So one of the, if you go to Sigma conference, you will see probably the main booths there, the largest ones, the brightest ones would be the platform providers. SoftSwiss, BetConstruct, OneWin, etc., etc. They are. It seems they are the kings of the industry right now. But at the same time, it's interesting. Most of they have part of their job which is regulated. They have their own casinos. They have their own betting businesses. But at the same time, sometimes they basically rent it out. So they provide it to others who basically get everything except for the liability. So they are liable for their own business. So they need to have a license. Their own entity, and so they will be liable for everything that is going on their casino. So this model of organization, how do you comment on that? Like, how do you consider this type of rent out liability business?
Sounds like a very good business, right?
Should be.
And also, if you take a look
at
it's
like a franchise, basically.
Yeah, it is. At the size of those stands, I mean, it's the business which makes money. So, from the perspective of saying if it's good and bad, I cannot really say because, I mean, the operators who are running the operations needs these software providers and platform providers. And as we've been discussing before, what they can deliver to you is much more than just the software, because I think it's a good point of sell when you say like, you just need to talk with me and I can deliver the games and I can give you the customer support and everything that you need. There are even companies which are creating like a wide labels for online casinos or betting shops, online ones, in which you will just take in your brand, your logo. Perhaps you are a land-based casino and you want to run an online business, but you don't know how, you don't have anything. So these guys will just come in and you will make an agreement with them, which I can only imagine, what are the terms of that. But basically they are going to be running the casino on your behalf. What is interesting, and I don't know about it, who takes the liability? Because definitely what could suffer the damage is the brand of the casino, but from the side of the liability, I don't think that it would fall solely on that brand. It has to be the people who are in the operations. You have a legal entity, so you can open up a legal entity, get the license, and then if something gets wrong, then you just lose this entity. That's it. It's so easy. When you compare it, for example, with fintech business. In fintech business, everything is based on the legal entity. Revolut is playing on behalf of one legal entity, or let's say Wise or other companies, even Binance. We see Binance right now are getting a lot of trouble because they have this legal entity in this jurisdiction, this legal entity in that jurisdiction. They are wrong on both sides. If they have a legal entity in the US, for example, they are wrong. If they don't have a legal entity in the US and they have one in, I don't know, somewhere on the island, and then again they are wrong. So here, in gambling business, it seems that it's like no-lose game. You don't have any problem. Even if you get in trouble, you just shut down your legal entity. You open up another one. Actually, there are some regulatory, I would say, reactions to it. For example, Finland have I think it was last year. No, Finland. Sorry, Sweden. Last year they have introduced update to their regulation, and now they are requiring the B2B providers, including the software providers, to have a license from Sweden.
Oh, that's very interesting. by the
And
way.
when you are having the license, you are not allowed to be providing your services to the organizations which are not licensed in Sweden. And I'm not completely sure how it is written, but what makes sense is to those who are accepting or targeting Swedish players without a license. So basically what they're trying to do with this, they are trying to stop the businesses and companies which are making money from regulated Swedish online gambling to provide their services to those who are doing it without having the license and without paying the fees and without having all the requirements connected with the license.
And this actually brings me to the next question, which is about the jurisdictions. There are a specific line of jurisdictions that are involved in gambling business. We have countries that do not allow any casinos to operate on their territory without the domestic license. And this is the US, for example, the UK, some of the European countries. And at the same time, we have what is called the global market, where everyone can do anything, the Wild West type of the thing. And then we have like a specific number of jurisdictions that are playing on this market. One of them is Malta, another is Gibraltar, another is Curacao, another is Costa Rica. You can name, I guess, others. Maybe Mauritius. What else? How do you think, is this something that's stable, or is it changing right now? What do you think about this?
I would say that there are two things. So I think that it's important to distinguish between these jurisdictions, because from the ones you have mentioned, I think the Curacao would be standing somewhere outside of the others, because I would say that there is very little of no legal basis of them operating in some countries where it is being perceived as illegal. But in comparison with if you take an example of Malta or Cyprus or Gibraltar, I mean, specifically for Malta and Cyprus being part of the European Union, what applies to them is also the European law and a sort of free market, which creates let's say loopholes in the jurisdictions and in the legal stuff in those jurisdictions, which allows them to operate there. But to your question, if it is stable, there are two things that are happening. I would say that the gray markets are disappearing, because eventually I think every country more or less is gonna either regulate online gambling or is gonna prohibit it, which would make just the white markets and the black markets. So and majority of the white markets are based in a way that you have a license from the specific country and you are allowed to be accepting players from that country, and this is where it ends. And if you will have majority of those countries regulated, the spaces are going to be closing, right? Which makes complete sense. But the second perspective is that we are in an online environment here, which doesn't really respect the borders of the countries. So to some extent, citizens or people have a choice. Then it's based on what is the culture or how it is perceived, how important are the personal liberties. But as a matter of fact, they would be able to access to casinos which are operating in different jurisdictions and are able to accept them or even target them. And then it is based on their decision whether they would be playing with the locally offered operators or if they would decide to go abroad. And what is important in this, what motivates these people, and I would say that mainly it's the entertainment stuff. It's the way how much do they like their online gambling experience in that country. So the competitiveness, it's very important in here. If we will end up in a situation that every country will have a very good product, will be very competitive and would be sufficient for the customers, I think it's going to decrease the amount of cross-jurisdiction gambling, which would eventually decrease the impact of these offshore jurisdictions. But I would say that it's not going to happen very soon, because if you look into the upcoming changes in the jurisdiction you've mentioned, the ones who are really stepping up their game and trying to regulate in a way which would be safer, which would be sustainable, and which would be a legitimate way of business, that doesn't necessarily comes to the same direction as the entertainment and competitiveness. Because, for example, when you look at the UK market or the market in the Netherlands, where the trajectory is going is to reducing the experience from the game by creating not obstacles but limits on what people can do. For example, the upcoming stake limit for UK citizens. So you would be able to stake £2 if you are under 24, 25 years old, and only 5 if you are above. Which, look at it as you wish, it would decrease the experience for some. On the other hand, it could prevent some from spending more than they would be able to offer. But it's very subjective, and it's very difficult to basically determine what is the right limit and what is the limit that is decreasing the experience that much that those people are going to be seeking the better experience elsewhere. And the trend is going to this direction. The Netherlands are considering that they would put on the limits of the depositing for, I think it's monthly deposit, which I don't remember what is the amount, but that's the same story. So we would see. But what I think, this is not something that is gonna decrease the prevalence of cross-jurisdiction gambling in those jurisdictions.
How do you think, because we have the free internet, et cetera, we basically have a struggle between the regulators in specific countries, for example, Netherlands. Okay, they impose certain limits, but the problem is that the Dutch people, they have access to the global internet, so they can go play in Curacao-based casino and have no limits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's...
And especially when they've been used to something. They've been used to some degree of experience, some sort of entertainment. And when you change it, then that's when the things will become difficult. I think the great example for this is Germany. So Germany started to regulate their online gambling. It's more than 2 years ago, I think. And they've put in measures which were made in order to protect the players, which were made in order to have a rightly structured online gambling. But what they haven't been looking at, from my perspective, is how the players are going to perceive it. What is their experience? How are they going to react on such measures? Yeah. And the result is that Germany has a very little channelization after even having a change. I think that was one organization at the beginning, then the organization has changed. Mm-hmm. Basically, they've said that they're going to do it in a little bit of a different way. But still, even the hard data is showing that the money which is coming from the regulated online gambling is by far not of what it was expected. And if you look at the channelization rates, it's definitely not something that would work. That's the most tricky and intriguing thing in online gambling, is the ability of players to play abroad. So every measure you would take, every good thing, everything that, because there is, I think I need to highlight this, because every time there is a good interest, what these regulators are doing, it's for the best interest of their players. At least they believe it. But well, what is important is that what the reaction is going to be and how it's going to end up.
Okay, we probably get to the most important part that you are interested in. Specifically, what you are doing is responsible gaming. So responsible gaming, as far as we understand, it's like a big complex of different things, such as, for example, self-exclusion lists, such as, for example, specific technologies that help to discern that certain behavior is not normal, that the person is already going somewhere beyond, that the person, for example, is playing at nights when the family is asleep or something like that. That's very typical as well. And then the person can be close to suicide or something like that as well. So we need to check the balance of his bank accounts, for example. We need to check the behavior of his stakes, some other things. So how do you think, what is the current state of affairs in terms of responsible gaming globally?
I think it has evolved very much in the past 5 years. So when you say responsible gambling, what it was associated with traditionally or still is mainly the prevention. So it would be things that are telling you how to play in a way that you wouldn't be experiencing gambling harm. Gambling harm is a notion, I think, that isn't as old as the responsible gambling, but basically this is what it says to you. To gamble in a way that you wouldn't end up in a situation when you would be spending unreasonable amount of time on unreasonable amount of money. And over the years, it has progressed into a term safer gambling, which is a much broader perspective and includes, I would say most importantly, also the participation of the operator, of the someone who might be able to see what happens with that player and then act. You mentioned the self-exclusion and limits. Those belongs to the part of the responsible gambling part because this is the way how you can gamble responsibly. So you would set up a limit and this will be the biggest amount of money you can spend or the time or whatever. But safer gambling, and I think it's here in the UK it's referred as a duty of care, which are basically saying that if you are as an operator see that there is something bad happening with a player, you should act. The problematic thing and the issue is that what exactly it is and when exactly you should do something about it, because the amounts of gambling are very subjectional. It's
Yeah, I would say so as well.
People have different amounts that they would be able to spend gambling. So that's why there is a big progress in the softwares which are able to analyze the behavior of the players, which makes it not only about the amount of money or the amount of the time spent, but would be also looking into a specific behaviors. For example, chasing after your losses or hitting the limit on your deposit limit multiple times and having the attempt to increase it, or multiple deposits after someone has spent the money, which should be able to give you a better idea, a better picture whether this person is doing something that is harming that person. And that's one thing that to determine it, which I think the industry is making a very good progress in. So I think that we are able to, or we have the technology and we have the research which is telling you how to determine this. And I think it could be quite accurate. But the trickiest part is that what are you going to do about it and how is going to be the impact of it? Because if you are certain that someone is spending a reasonable amount of money or the time, then just telling him that or her that, you know, you shouldn't be spending that much, perhaps you should take a break. And the reaction of that person is everything that, what is creating the result. Because the person can say, like, no, I'm all right, let's just keep me gamble. And then eventually you can block the person. So you won't allow that person to be spending money anymore. But what the person could do, he could go somewhere else and spend the money again and be deepening the harm that is coming from gambling. So what you
cannot stop this somehow.
Indeed. So what you want to do is to motivate the player or nudge the player to become aware of the situation and to embrace it and to do something about it, which is very difficult.
Sounds like a good idea for a startup.
There are many companies which are trying to figure it out, but the problem is that if the player
Psychotech
doesn't want, perhaps the Elon Musk Neuralink or
Neuralink, something like that
could help with
buzz your brain.
because from this perspective it just falls down to a player, what their motivation, their decision is going to be. And the best we can do as an industry is to evaluate what the person is doing and then to motivate them, to again nudge them, so they would change their perspective. They would start doing things in order for a change.
Can you give an example how technologically this can work? I mean, if there are technologies that you say, I mean, okay, Neuralink is is something that is like the next generation. Maybe in 5 years it will work, which is just around the corner. But still, what is available right now for a casino to work properly?
I think the best of technology currently possible is the softwares which are using AI in order to assess the aspects of behavior. It looks into what are the times when you are logging in, what you are doing specifically. If you are playing with the specific game that you like, or if you are just browsing the games, everything can be detected, tracked, or followed, and then evaluated and put out the conclusion out of it. There is actually a very interesting project which is happening right now, and is the sort of like a harmonization of the markers of harm. Markers of harm are those specific things which you can do, which are telling you as an operator that something bad is happening, like I was saying before. But there is not a general agreement on what it is specifically. Historically, there were some behavioral markers, or basically some behaviors which was taught that they are the ones which are harmful, but eventually they weren't. So the thing is that you cannot always say what exactly is happening with that person. So perhaps someone would be spending the money in a way that he was spending before, but the person might have been laid off. The person might have lost his employment. Yeah. So you would be looking into other behavioral aspects that the person is doing. Perhaps playing at night. The change of behavior is one of the main factors which is telling you that something is happening with that person.
Yeah, right. So right now, these things are available on the platforms, on the gaming platforms that are, that are on the market currently. So
yes, and some jurisdiction they even require it. And some jurisdictions are specific, that they require that every operator, every license holder would have a software which is able to determine it. Yeah. I'm not sure if any of them are specifically requiring AI softwares, because you can do it by different kind of ways. Yeah. Some small operators are even doing it manually. Yeah. So they just have their CRM database or something in which you can deploy or create on your own some way of assessing and monitoring data, some sort of an algorithm. And then you would say that some players are in the red lights, and then you need to decide what to do with it. I mean, even if you are using a very comprehensive software, it needs a human touch. It needs a person who will make a decision of what should be done with it, and then also execute the decision and talk with the person.
I personally analyzed, for example, the jurisprudence of the UK Gambling Commission. The UK Gambling Commission is probably one that I know that have really like a lot of jurisprudence on the failures of the gaming providers to do something with the responsible gaming issues. When they have, for example, let's say a housemaid who has spent like 5 months salary in one day because nobody cared about her situation. So, but we don't have others. How do you think, to which extent responsible gaming is really required in the gaming world?
That's a very good question, actually, because what is I mean, there are two things why you want to do responsible gambling and why you want to engage in player protection. The one would be the ethical reason, because it's the right thing to do. When you are able to see that something bad is happening, you should interfere or interact, that's a better word, rather than just saying that that's an adult and the person is responsible for their spending, and if they want to spend it gambling, why should I stop the person? That's one thing. The second thing is regulation, which is telling you to do it, and which also has some sort of a enforcing ability.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, because when you have a corpus of decisions.
Yes, to this extent, it's basically the threat.
Yeah.
So, what is the threat for me as an operator if I don't do something which is required by the regulation? and they might figure it out. The only way is that the UKGC would come and they would make an audit and they would see all the data and they would see that I've let someone spend 60,000 in a week and didn't do anything. So they would fine me and it would be all over the media and my reputation would be damaged. But this not applies everywhere. There are regulators which are not doing many of these audits, or perhaps they do, but there are no failures. I don't know, because you can say from what is out there in the media and how it's publicized is that UK does it, Sweden does it, Denmark does it. I think I've also seen some cases from Toronto. There are many from Australia.
From Australia,
From Australia, even though they only have online sports betting regulated, but they have a huge gambling market as for I wouldn't say brick and mortar because it's not a casino all the time, it's just slot machines and pubs. But there is a big prevalence of land-based activities in Australia. And there are others, and the third aspect which I wanted to highlight is why you would want to do this is that there is a value for your long-term operations, and not only for the possible threats, but also for the way that if you will keep your players spending in a reasonable amount and they would remain entertained, you can count on them for a long run. I mean, naturally, you will have to work on retention and you would have to make them happy with your offers. But it's a way more sustainable business than to having someone who would spend big amount of money in a span of 2 weeks or 2 months, and then there would be nothing out of that player. In a commercial sense, the worst part is that most probably the person is gonna have so much gambling harm and perhaps a very big difficulties in their lives when it comes to financials and when it comes to relationships. That's another aspect, which is not touching you as an operator directly, but indirectly it is increasing the environment and the public perception which is negative against you. Because gambling is perceived very negatively. I mean, every time I tell someone that I work in gambling, the reaction is like, "Oh, really? So,
nice person, but works in such a
it's like, are you all
dirty
right with
industry."
that? Are you all right with that? Doing this? Yeah, well, quite well. So that's another thing, and that's the whole point of this sustainability of online gambling in a very narrow meaning. When I say sustainability, I mean basically sustainable spending, sustainable activity from the side of the operator and also from the side of the player. So both are going to be satisfied. The operators, it's going to have a commercial advantage from the house edge and going to make money on gambling because this is what they want to do in a way that it is reasonable for that person on the other side. So the person is going to be entertained, is going to be kept in check that they spend what they can afford, and then everybody is happy and we can do it for a long run.
I know that one of the things that you are working on is global self-exclusion lists. Can you tell something about this? What is?
Yes, of course. Thank you for asking. So the self-exclusion, as I mentioned, is one of the responsible gambling tools which you can do when you feel like you cannot handle your gambling anymore. So currently, you can self-exclude with a specific operator, with a specific casino. And then in many jurisdictions already, you can self-exclude on every licensed operator in that country.
For example, Germany, I know they have this, I guess.
They have also, UK has it, Sweden has it, Denmark. I wouldn't dare to say what is the number of countries from the Europe, but many of them has it because it makes perfect sense and it works. But it has one disadvantage, which perhaps is not a disadvantage, it's just a fact, that there is so much more beyond that jurisdiction. So if you are a player from the UK or from any other country, there are hundreds of other casinos which are be able to accept you without them having any chance to know that you've been self-excluded. So you can gamble.
Because they are in Curacao or in Gibraltar, etc.
Or in Malta, basically anywhere which is out of the scope of that specific jurisdictions, and that operator with a specific license is gonna accept you as a player. So that's a loophole which makes it very difficult for anyone who wants to be self-excluded to be safe and sound and to be in an environment where the I would say, bigger amount of operators than just from the single jurisdiction is going to be able to block that person. So that's why we've started the initiative. It's 3 years already, I think, which aims into creating of such a system. And when I say initiative, that's because it is more or less a campaign, and it's not something that we could do on our own. So I have started by having the discussions with people, and we were trying to figure out how it could work in the current fragmented regulation, because the main issue for any global system is that there is no global regulatory authority. And even if you consider the federal government of US or the European Union or any other bigger establishment of countries, they have very little to be saying to those specific states of what to do about gambling. So we cannot really expect that these structures is going to be able to get ahead with something like that. So after these discussions, we figured how it could work. So we created sort of like a blue paper, which describes how the system could work. It would be based, or it should be based, on the voluntary principle, because of what I've described. So the operators would be joining in because they want to provide the increased amount of protection for their players. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, no legitimate operator from wherever the operator is operating from wants problematic gamblers, because it's more
creates risks. It's a problematic asset.
Yeah, it's more risk than a value, but the problem is that you cannot really say at the beginning whether the person is spending in a reasonable way, or especially whether the person was self-excluded. So the stage we are at right now is we are focusing on developing standards about self-exclusion for the basic reason connected with the global system that we didn't know what should be part of the global system, because every jurisdiction has a different kind of procedures and rules for self-exclusion. Basically saying how self-exclusion should be executed. I'm talking about the available times for self-exclusion. I'm talking about the possibility to reopen the account, or how the self-exclusion should be initiated. Should be through the information over the email, or should it be available in the settings of the account? So there was no best practice for self-exclusion. And in order for this product to be a quality product, it needs to have a quality things inside of it. So instead of going ahead and building something which would include stuff that we feel like are the best, we rather focused on a project which consists of a comprehensive methodology and people involved to develop these self-exclusion standards. And best thing about this is that the result of this project, these recommendations for best practices, are not going to be usable only for the global system, but for any other online self-exclusion system out there.
I actually think that on the European level, this is absolutely possible in light of what is called the Digital Services Act. I just issued a previous episode on my channel, on our channel, about Digital Services Act, and this is actually a thing that provides for some kind of a prudential approach towards self-regulation for online platforms. It doesn't say anything about gambling specifically. It says about any types of online platforms. So probably on the basis of this regulation, you could actually build something like that. And I would also recommend to you to follow the U.S. approach. In Illinois, for example, any Illinois citizen can sue you for processing biometric data without specific consent or something like that. So if, for example, in the European Union, every European citizen could, for example, sue a casino just because they have not followed the self-exclusion list, this would be a tremendous development, I'm sure. Everyone would be absolutely aware about this list then. But still, so you think that the future of responsible gaming is more or less connected with these kinds of lists, these kinds of data sources that could be available for everyone?
I would say that it would definitely help, and I would also say that it's not an easy thing. If you would read the blue paper, you would find many challenges which are associated with it. The fact is that self-exclusion by its nature, it's an imperfect thing. Also, the self-exclusion with a single operator, it's imperfect because there are many, I don't want to say loopholes, but the opportunities for a failure or for an error which will result in that not being functional. So for example, the person would be creating another account and they would use a different variation of their name. And this only increases when you look at the global system, because you are looking into aligning all the different kind of names and all the different kind of personal details in the world. So there are many difficulties on how to do it, but having a imperfect structure is still better than have no structure at all. Because if that can prevent at least one person from not gambling further and not deepening their gambling related harm, then it's something that is good to pursue for. And again, that being an initiative, it's a process.
I know that in Brazil, for example, they have an interesting data source, which is the list of, it's like PEP lists, but it's for the family members of the sports people, like, for example, the football players. So all of them and their family members are on the list, and so they are under increased let's say, increased monitoring in case of betting, because obviously these people can influence the betting system. Now getting to the Mother Earth. As far as we understand, we are talking about very serious things, very high-level things. But in real life, we have lots of casinos that are regulated somewhere in Curacao or, I don't know, Isle of Man or some other places. I'm not telling bad about UK jurisdiction, but still most of these places are somehow associated with the UK. Not only with the UK. It can be Chinese territories or something like that. So still, all of them are not employing anything like that. And sometimes they even don't have KYC at all. What would be your perception? What is the share of these casinos on your list in Casino Guru?
It's hard to determine. I mean, they are definitely there because we want to have everyone in the database in order to have this reputational background about them. So there would be a source of information. It doesn't mean that every person from every country is able to see them. So you can access our website from almost anywhere in the world, but we adjust it by geolocation based on the regulation and based on what is allowed in these jurisdictions. So they wouldn't see it. But the things you've mentioned, a lot of them are connected with the commercial, which is part of online gambling. For example, the KYC, the majority of casinos are not doing KYC before the first deposit. I am aware only about the UK to be the jurisdiction which requires it in a way that...
Upon the registration, basically.
Upon the registration. I think what they're saying is everything how it is exactly. So you shouldn't be requiring any other information or KYC after the deposit. So you should be able to do everything at the beginning. But this is not the case. This is not the case for the majority. They would require you to authenticate yourself when you want to withdraw money, right? Because you want to have the onboarding process frictionless and you want to have it very easy. And what is the tricky part is, even though you would want as a operator to be very responsible, like I only want to have the players who are not at risk, who are gambling with me. So they are older than 18 years old, or perhaps older in some jurisdictions now. There is a lot of scrutiny looking into young adults which are in more risks. Many jurisdictions are making differences beyond and above 24 years old. So you want to do this, but the thing is that the majority or your competition might not be doing it. So for you to do it, you would need to make the process of onboarding more complicated. And you might increase your chances that the players are going to drop out during this process. So now you're in a situation, will I do something that is a good thing to do and might even help my business in the future, but I will put myself into a jeopardy, possibly, because there is a competition which is a much shorter onboarding process, and they're just going to go with them. So this is another aspect which makes online gambling very tricky, that even if you would do something that is connected with being responsible and really taking an eye on your players, you risk that someone else is not doing it, and it might bring the better experience for these players, even though they are not realizing that the thing you want to know is better for them, because what they want, they just want to gamble, they just want to have a good experience, they want to entertain, they want to spend money and win money, so they don't care. But you would think twice before doing it, because you might lose your market share. And it applies to advertising, and it applies to all of the other areas which could be perceived as something that is possibly harmful for people, or increasing their exposure in gambling, which could be perceived negatively.
Again, one of the problems, financial problems related to gambling, is that money from gambling are considered high risk, are considered dirty money, etc., etc. And at the same time, inside the gaming industry, there is the concept of legit casinos and non-legit casinos. First of all, how do you perceive this concept of legit, which is different from legitimate, different from legal, different from lawful? There's just legit. It's number one. Number two, how would you maybe suggest for a bank, for example, a financial institution, to distinguish between those casinos that are really high risk and those that are not? Because obviously there's a lot of money, and obviously fintechs who are watching this video, they would like to understand which casinos they can accept, which ones they cannot accept, because obviously if you just don't accept any gambling money, then this is lost opportunity for your business.
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure if I'm able to answer it in a very comprehensive way, but when I think about it, this is the issue that the Curaçao is dealing with, and I see it as one of the main motivations for them to re-regulate, because this is what they are doing at the moment. They are re-regulating their legislation, which was about time, I would say, because the structure it was having before, it was just unsustainable. And the reason for it was that there were many companies which didn't want to do business with them, because they were perceived as a high risk. And I cannot really say, except of FATF, the watchdog for anti-money laundering, I cannot think about many other organizations which would be like determining of what jurisdiction is more riskier or less riskier to you. So I think it's also like the result of some sort of a community decision or perception, because even though you might not have a specific organization which is pointing the finger, the high level or highly performing business community would have their own perception, right? And you might risk that the people who are, or the companies who are part of it, would not be doing business with you without any, official and specific pointing out. And I think this is something that...
Just community decision,
Indeed. And I think it's also company by company whether they decide that it's riskier for them or not. So perhaps the recent step from Entain Group, Entain is one of the biggest operators originated in the UK. They have, not recent, I think it's a year ago, they've announced that they would be backing off from every market which is, they didn't say grey, but which is not a soon to be regulated market. So what it means is they won't be operating anymore in the areas where the gambling was not regulated but also was not prohibited. So it was legally allowed for them to operate there, because I believe that they want to decrease their risks. I think that from a certain perspective, it's a good thing to do, because what you want for that market is you want them to regulate it on their own, and you want them to have their own perspective, and so everybody would be following the rules. But on the other hand, what it also causes is that players from that market have been used to gamble with companies, perhaps like Entain or other companies, which are reliable companies, which you can tell would be sticking out with their principles and is going to be highly proactive into protection of the players. So you would consider them a good operator, even though they are in a market which could be considered gray. So what's going to happen for these people? Because the regulation is not going to happen over time. So their possibility to gamble is going to be decreased from those reliable companies. So it doesn't mean that they would stop gambling. They would find someone else who might not be as good or as reliable as these companies. And I think that this is sort of a trend that big public companies are basically decreasing the risk and trying to be focused mainly on the really highly regulated jurisdictions. So it's a very tricky area, and I understand the reasons why, but I think it's fair to address also the other con. I'm not saying that it was a bad decision. I'm just hoping that the regulation in those countries are going to be quicker, and the players are going to be able to receive the quality offering which would be taken care.
To endanger your public perception, especially in the industry, I would pose this question. What would be, let's say, your whitelist of jurisdictions that are absolutely secure from the riskiness side for any kind of a fintech, any kind of a bank to work with them? Which jurisdictions you would?
I think there are many. I would say that most of the European jurisdictions are quite safe, because in all of them, basically, you have the companies with the licenses operating just within that specific market, accepting player within that specific market. So I won't see many risks over there, but I understand that for fintechs it could be more attractive to operate in different kinds of markets. Yes. Which I cannot really say. I mean, I wouldn't dare to point out on any jurisdiction, but not from the. I'm not hesitant in this because of any public, announcements or anything. Yeah. But I just don't know. To be fair with you, because there are so many nuances which needs to be considered. And I think it's not crystal clear.
For the people who, again, we have different people in the audience. We have people who are compliance officers in gambling companies. We have possible owners of casinos. That we have, I guess, platforms as well. What would be your, let's say, your advice for a person who is working in a casino, or who invested in a casino, just bought a license and thinks how to organize it?
That's a good one again. I would say that
and they have advisors who say, don't care, just you don't need any policies, you don't need anything, just hire one compliance officer. And that's it.
You know what? I think that this might be a tactic which would work for someone who just want to make money very quickly, which I wouldn't say is always guaranteed. I cannot really say how profitable is online business when it comes to having big money quickly. I wouldn't say it's that lucrative as it was before, again, from the perceptions and discussions that I am following and receiving. So on the contrary, what I would recommend is to look for the opportunities or companies which want to be there for a long run, which want to build their brand, which want to build their position in the market slowly, in a way that is not creating much of the risks on the way. Because we were able to see some missteps which some companies have created in the past, and now they are paying their price for it, and that is something that was sticking with them. So I think that to be patient and to invest in the projects that are looking into this perspective, because online gambling is not going to be disappearing. It is here, and it's only going to grow, even though the regulation is going to be more stricter in some jurisdiction. And I think that we are currently on a trajectory that is going this way. I'm not sure if it's going to go down or not, but definitely I would say that go for a long run. Do not try to make money quickly, because it might catch with you afterwards if you do not want to just disappear and end up somewhere on a tropical island for the rest of your life or business.
Well, I guess that's it. And this was Szymon Vincze of Casino Guru. And thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you for having me. It was a great pleasure to be talking with you on this subject.
Thank you.